So the Torah says like this. We're talking about the menachos. The menachos are the korbanos that are brought by a poor man. Remember we said that? The korbanos are menachos brought by a poor man who, you might have to move that, Gil. The korbanos are brought by a poor man who we gave him 5 choices of meal offerings to bring because we don't want him to feel bad. So in any event, the Torah says like this, a Pasuk Zayin, and Pasuk Yud Aleph. We're talking about the minchas, and you bring these meal offerings, and you bring flour and frankincense. That's usually frankincense is some sort of spice that you bring with it, which is eventually burnt on the altar. And then it says like this, Kol ha-mincha asher takruv el Hashem, 2 lines from the bottom, every mincha offering that you bring, lo say ase chometz, do not let it become chometz. Ki chol seor, any sort of yeasting agent. How does the article translate it? Any sort of prepared leavened. Kikol seor, any sort of seor. The chol dvash, in anything sweet. Where is it? For any leavening or fruit honey. Lo saktir mimenu ishal Hashem. You're not allowed to use it as an offering for Hashem. So the Torah comes along and says, on your mincha offerings, which are meal offerings, don't allow it to become chametz. Don't use any sort of leavening agent, which is usually yeast, and don't use any sort of, if you want to mix in some sort of fruit flavoring, some sort of sweet flavoring that you're also not allowed to do on the mincha offering. Anything sweet is not permissible on the minachos. So the idea is like this. First of all, yeast is sour. Yeast is one of the most sour things you're going to find. And fruit flavoring is obviously sweet. Okay? So number one, just keep that in mind. Number one, what does yeast do?
It rises.
It rises, it causes other things to rise. Right. So in life, obviously we are driven, everybody has the drives of what we call the Yetzer Hara. What are the 2 categories where the Yetzer Hara is most manifest?
Immorality and money.
Gaiva, which is haughtiness, and taiva, which is physical desire, which really is immorality and money, because money usually comes from gaiva, and the pursuit of money is generally a pride thing. Most people have more money than they know what to do with. And there's gaiva and there's taiva, which is physical desire. So the Torah is telling you that when you're bringing an offering on the altar, leave out your gaiva and leave out your taiva. That means the Torah is telling you the first 2 things. Any trait, any negative trait you could think of are going to be an offshoot of that. The Vilna Gaon actually breaks it down into ka'as, which is anger and taiva. That's how he breaks down the 2 main categories. It's anger. Maybe turn off the cell phone. Anger and desire. Anger and desire. Anger is a manifestation of haughtiness. When you get angry, most times in life you get angry, the anger is a result that you are not in control. That's where anger is coming from. The man has a deep-seated desire to be in control, as we find that Chava was tempted by the Nachash. The Nachash said to her, eat from the fruit, you'll be like God. Man wants to be God because God's in control. Anger, most of the time in life, anger is not because of the thing that happened. Anger is that you're not in control. That's generally what's frustrating you. You're not in control. Obviously, there are exceptions. But if you told your brother to leave the key to the front door, leave it in the mailbox, and it wasn't there when he got home, it's not the end of the world. There are other things you could do. You're not in control. Why couldn't the nitwit listen to you? If your wife spends more than she should have, right, it's not going to break the bank. It's not going to break the bank. You'll be okay. You'll survive it. Okay, she spent an extra $20 on a sweater. You'll make it. You'll make it. But you said not to, and she did. That's what's upsetting you. You said not to. You want to be in control. That's where anger is coming from. So it's really an offshoot of gaiva. So the Torah comes along and says, number one, leave out on your offerings, leave out those 2 things. Leave out yeast, which is gaiva, and leave out sweet, which obviously sweet represents taiva. Leave that out. Bring an offering and try to strip yourself away, move yourself away from these 2 drives. Number one. Number 2, what I mentioned earlier, yeast is sour. Yeast has a very sour, very bad taste. The extreme opposite of the yeast is sweet. Okay? So the yeast and the, we're going to talk about this more in a second, but the yeast and the sweet represent the extremes. The Rambam says that when somebody is serving God, how are you meant to serve God? Don't serve God with the extremes. Walk what the Rambam calls the golden path. The golden path. Don't be too stingy. Don't be overly generous. If you're overly generous, you're going to go broke. Don't be overly stingy because that's not nice. Find the middle, find the median path in every trait in life. Find the median. Don't be too sensitive. Don't be too sensitive when sometimes people are just so sensitive. Everybody says, every time somebody says something, they got World War III. On the other hand, don't be totally immune to, you need a certain amount of sensitivity. You got to find that middle path. The only time that a person goes to the extreme, says the Rambam, the only time you go to the extreme is if a person is suffering in one area from some trait that he's really being dominated by. Let's say a person is selfish. So the Rambam says a person who is selfish should go to the other extreme, just be completely giving and completely, completely generous until you break that trait, then slide back to the middle. Then slide back. That's called the golden rule, the golden path. Same thing if a person is always getting angry. People are always getting angry. If you're always getting angry, go to the opposite extreme. Don't allow anything to bother you. I don't know how to do that, by the way. Other than drugs, I don't know how to do that. Go to the opposite extreme for a while until you are completely immune to any sort of anger, until it no longer bothers you at all. Then go to the middle extreme. Person in the home, sometimes, Rabbi Yisrael Salanter said that the halacha is sometimes you have to show anger in the home, not to your wife, to your children. You have to show anger in the home, but it has to be external anger only. It has to be external anger. You have to have the ability to somebody yell at, go to sleep already. Then turn to the person. Was that good? Was that too loud or was that good? You understand? I wasn't really angry. Problem is that when you do show the external show of anger, it often arouses the real anger. That's the problem. It's a trick. It's not easy. It's not easy, and therefore you're better off not doing it. Sometimes otherwise you'll have the ironic situation of the father yelling at his son to stop yelling in the house. You ever get one of those, don't you raise your voice in this house? And the father's yelling himself, and the kid is looking like, are you out of your mind? Guy looks like absolutely absurd. Guy's yelling at him not to yell. So you have to be very, very careful about these things, about how to do it. The point is that the Seor and the Dvash don't bring the extremes up on the altar. That's not how we serve God. We serve God with the middle path, total normalcy. Don't be an extremist. Don't be an extremist. Okay, the problem with extremism obviously is, what extreme, if I ask you what's extreme is generally anybody who does more or less than you do. If you jog a mile a night and somebody else jogs 3 miles, well, that's a bit extreme. If you jog a mile a night and somebody else doesn't jog at all, that's also extreme. Extreme is me. Perfect is me. I'm correct, but I do is right. Anybody who does more or less, and religiously, sometimes people see that as well. That you are extreme, right? Because what I am is the religiously correct. So if you, what we call God-fearing, they call extreme, right? That's why we're called the ultra-Orthodox. Ultra-Orthodox carries a negative implication. We're ultra-Orthodox. In other words, you're the right Orthodox, we're the ultra-Orthodox. Well, I beg to differ. We are the Orthodox. You are compromise Orthodox. How's that? We're not the ultra-Orthodox. We're Orthodox. You're compromise Orthodox, right? So who's the right one? You understand? We had a guy came to the yeshiva, to the other yeshiva. He's a professional, and his son is really getting into learning, and his son looks like he wants to stay on in full-time learning. So the father was talking to one of the other staff members there, and he said to him, listen, we're all for the learning, but we want balance. There has to be with balance. So he spoke to the father after he left. He didn't say it to the father. He said to me, the guy doesn't realize what he said to me. When he said to me he wants his son to have balance in his life, what he's really saying is, we are all off balance. That's what he was really saying. He didn't mean to insult him that way, but that's really what he's saying. So the Torah is saying, serve with the middle path. Now look at the next mitzvah. Look at Pasuk Yud Gimel. So the first thing is no yeast and no honey. Then on Pasuk Yud Beis it says, Korban Reishis Takrivo Sam Lashem El Mizbech Lo Yalu L'Rech Nichach. And Pasuk Yud Gimel, page 552, 2 lines from the top. V'chol korban min choscha b'melach timlach. Every korban should have salt put on it. V'lo sashbis melach brisa lokecha me'al mikosecha. Do not withhold salt of the covenant from on your meal offerings. Al kol korban chatak v'becha. On all your korbanos you must bring salt. Now, what that means is like this. Very interesting concept here. Why is there salt put on the mizbeach? So first of all, the first idea, the commentaries say, the korbanos of the idol worshippers were brought without salt. Don't ask me why. For whatever reason. They brought their korbanos without salt, and one of the themes that we find repeating itself when it comes to the korbanos in the Beis HaMikdash, one of the themes that we find repeating is that in the Beis HaMikdash, the korbanos are brought without, are to try to do things differently than the idol worshippers. That's something we find all the time, that we try to do things differently than the idol worshippers. That's one of the reasons we don't shave with a razor. Because idol worshiping priests shave with the razor. Why we don't take haircuts like that? We'll see later on where we don't cut our hair around. You know what's it called? We don't cut the payas, the corners of our head, because it was something the idol worshippers do. So whatever they did or didn't do, we do the opposite. So one of the things, apparently, according to I think the Ramban, others, they didn't put salt on their korbanos. Therefore, we put salt on our korbanos to be different than them. Number one. Number two, something brought without salt. If somebody were to put food on the table without flavoring it, so there's something, it's not very appetizing. You know, you always flavor, you always put in some sort of spices or some sort of flavoring, something that you put in. So the salt on the korban represents the fact that we're flavoring the korban to make it more honorable to HaKadosh Baruch Hu when we're presenting the mincha. Okay, that's the basic idea behind the salt. Now there are two deeper ideas. What are
my answer was salt. Usually when you're talking about it, it alludes to preserving something.
Good, very good, very good. It's exactly what it is, exactly what the commentaries say. The commentaries say salt, we even find where the Torah refers to it as a covenant of salt. The bris melach, a covenant of salt. Salt is a preservative. Salt is the ultimate preservative. Whenever you make preservatives, whenever you do want to preserve something, one of the basic ingredients is salt. Salt is a preservative. Salt doesn't get stale. And nobody at the table ever said, "Ooh, could you bring more salt? The salt is stale." Right? The salt keeps other things from getting stale. Apparently, having said that, I read a few years ago about this. In the salt industry, the major industry around the world, massive amounts of salt are used. They have these salt mines, and salt is it's used in just about everything. All foods have salt in it, probably more than they should. Ketchup has salt in it, and crackers have salt in it, and cake has salt. Everything's got salt in it. Salt's a major industry. So the function of salt is that salt is a symbol of something that's never ending and never goes stale. Salt on the korbanos represent the bond between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That when we and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we bring the korbanos, and the Beis HaMikdash represents the bond between us and Ribono Shel Olam, and salt is the never-ending bond between us. Okay, that's the symbolism of salt. There's another idea over here. That is as follows. Now pay attention carefully. By the way, that's one of the reasons why we put salt on our table on Shabbos. Why do you put salt on the table? Salt is because our table is a mizbeach. We don't have an altar nowadays. So we put the salt on the table to be a commemoration of the altar in the Beis HaMikdash. Our table becomes a mizbeach. Now, depending on how we eat, food should be kosher. There should be no lashon hara. Say dvar Torah. You turn your table into an altar. So you put the salt on the table. That's why, you know why we dip 3 times?
Yeah. There's melech. It's like,
Melech is 78.
Yeah.
Numerical value of melech is 78. And salt in Hashem's name is 26. So you dip 3 times, 26, you get the melech, which is 78. Okay, that's one of the why it's brought. Sometimes people get a little bit salt trigger happy. Sometimes you get a piece of bread. Somebody over there takes this minhag a little is too eager and enthusiastic about the minhag. You don't have to be so. You don't have to smother it in salt. You can touch it 3 times, but you should always have salt on the table as a commemoration of the mizbeach and the Beis HaMikdash. By the way, that's one of the reasons the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says if 3 people ate together at the table and they did not say a dvar Torah, it's as if they ate sacrifices of the dead. Zifrei Mesa means offerings that were brought to idol worship. An interesting fight man's words. Right? 3 people ate at the table. They didn't say a Dvar Torah. It's as if they ate mizivche mesim. Oof.
3 men or just in general?
It says shlosha shachlu. Could be it's 3. It probably include that. Well, let's call it men. It probably includes women too. So first of all, the commentaries ask, why 3? Why not 2? Why did it say 3 people ate together and didn't say Dvar Torah? It's as if they ate offerings. Why not 2 people that ate together and didn't say Dvar Torah? Or 1 person who didn't learn a Mishnah. Why is it 3 people ate together and didn't say Dvar Torah?
Because usually with 3 people, you can assume that word is going to travel around the table. With 2 people, it's not.
Close. Very good. Very good. Shalom, very good. The part of the idea is that 1 person or two people sit at a table could be in a rush. You sat down to have breakfast. Yeah, let's get 3 people sit together. That's generally a scheduled meal. 2 people could sit together because, we just happen to end up at the same table. 3 people are sitting together, that's already a happening. So, if you sit down at a table and you don't say Dvar Torah, so what are you really saying? What are you really saying? You're eating to live or you're living to eat? When you say a Dvar Torah at the table, what you're showing is, we're eating because we have to eat. And we also, quote, unquote, parenthetically, we enjoy eating too. But we're eating because we have to. In the proof that we're using this as part of our serving of Kosh Baruch Hu, is we said a Dvar Torah at the table. Not just eating. Otherwise you're no different than an idol worshiper. Okay? So you have to say Dvar Torah. By the way, it doesn't have to be doesn't have to be a clop on the table. Okay, now there's going to be a Dvar Torah. It doesn't have to be a whole drasha. All you have to say is something like, you're not allowed to speak after you wash the Tilas Yadayim. Good, you just said a Dvar Torah. That's all you have to do. Doesn't have to be anything major. Doesn't have to be anything.
Is this only for washing, or is this like...
Anytime 3 people are sitting together at a table, say a Dvar Torah. Dvar Torah, what do you call it? You say, Moshe's name was left out of Parshat Tetzaveh. Oh, good, you said a Dvar Torah. Something connected to reality. Something connected to Torah. Doesn't matter what it is. The Vilna Gaon was once sitting. He had his Talmidim were sitting at a different table. And one of the Talmidim, the Vilna Gaon was learning, and one of his Talmidim were eating at a different table. One of the Talmidim said, we have to say a Dvar Torah, so this shouldn't be like a Zivchei Mesim. So it shouldn't be like, like offerings. So the Vilna Gaon lifted up and said, you were just Yotzei, the Dvar Torah. Right? You just said a Dvar Torah. That was a Dvar Torah. Okay? There's a deeper idea. Listen to this, a beautiful idea. There's Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky. You've heard of Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, right? Rabbi Kamenetsky says as follows. You see, in the ancient world, not even the ancient world, in our world today, what do the idol-worshipping priests, what kind of lifestyle do they adopt?
Secluded?
Secluded? There's a word for it. They have a vow of celibacy. Mm-hmm. What's called? Oath of celibacy or vow of celibacy? A vow of celibacy. Plus, in general, they are, what's the word? Ascetics. Separated from everything in the physical world. In the non-Jewish world, the priest is often somebody who, like you say, he's separated. He's often a monastery, and he's living a life of total separation. He's the religious guy. What about the rest of us? The rest of us are just, people who go to church once every couple of weeks and we confess our sins. Right? Then we live it up till then, we go in and confess again. He is the guy who's religious. A person who sits at a table and doesn't understand that this is also part of our service of God. Eating is part of our service of God. And the proof is that when we eat, we say a Dvar Torah as well. If you don't, that means you're making a statement. My statement is, what I'm doing right now physically has nothing to do with serving God. That's exactly the attitude of idol worshippers. That's why it's as if you've eaten sacrifices to idols. Because what you're doing is you're buying into their life philosophy. Their life philosophy is that anything physical by them is inherently evil. Isn't that what the Catholics hold? Anything physical is inherently evil.
So we make the physical...
We elevate the physical. So if you're sitting in a physical situation of eating and you don't say a Dvar Torah, what you're really doing is you're buying into their attitude. Their attitude is that this has nothing to do with serving. Our attitude is that it does. And if you don't, that means you're one of them. Therefore, it's similar to idol worship. Okay? That's what Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says. Okay. Now, there's another idea here. Where does salt come from?
The sea.
Okay. Now, do you know that there was a book written once by Rabbi Harold Kushner called Why Bad Things Happen to Good People. One of the all-time bestsellers. One of the all-time bestsellers. I think it was when it was outside of. I think it was what really was like at the top of the charts. I think maybe Harry Potter and maybe the Impact books are the only ones that compete with it. But other than that, it was one of the top bestsellers. What happened to Harold Kushner? Harold Kushner was a Reconstructionist rabbi, and he had a son who at 8 years old developed a disease called rapid aging disease, where between the ages of 8 and 12 years old, there is no medical symptom other than he gets old. He old. At 12 years old, he had the body of an 80-year-old, wrinkles, gray hair, everything else, and eventually dies of old age at 12 years old. And it's a terribly agonizing ordeal for the family. After this happened, so this Kushner wrote the book. Now, we're not judging the man himself because the man himself went through terrible personal suffering. His philosophy, however, is what we would call kfira. His philosophy is heresy. What he says in answer to the question is why bad things happen to good people. So first of all, he says there are forces of good and forces of evil. God is the forces of good. There are forces of evil which act independently of God and could strike anybody at any time, randomly and haphazardly. That's the philosophy of his book. In Torah, we say, I don't know why that would comfort anybody, by the way. I don't know why that, to the contrary, that should be very, very non-comforting. I don't know if that was meant to comfort anybody, but it's like somebody once told me it was at a house of the mourner. So, usually people go to the house of a mourner by a younger person. And at the house of a younger person, it's usually people, people could always, people often walk away and, they're all torn up. A younger person died. At the house of an older person, okay, that's the way of the world. People, kind of take it in stride. Somebody once pointed out to the contrary. When you walk away from the house of a younger person who died, you can at least comfort yourself and say, well, maybe it won't happen to me. When you walk away from the house of an older person, you can't say, what do you mean it won't happen to you? No kidding. It's going to catch you sooner or later. You can't, there's no comfort over there. Okay? So the Torah attitude is, God created agents. There are agents of good and agents of evil. There are what we call midas adin and midas arachamim, but that's all under God's direct control. Nothing is random, nothing is haphazard. That was the philosophy of his book. His book went back to an ancient philosophy. In the ancient world, they had a philosophy that God does not rule the extremes. Did you ever hear that idea? There's a good God. If there's a God is good, so God does not control that which is evil, that which is bad, that which is unpleasant. Can't be that one God rules on the extremes. That was the ancient philosophy. His book was really a recycling of that ancient philosophy. I don't know if it was the Greeks or whoever it was. You could ask Rabbi Gottlieb for the details who that was. The Torah attitude is completely different. God rules the extremes. God rules. God's in complete control of the extremes. Now, if you had to pick two things that are the most extreme opposites in life, what would you pick? Two things that are most extreme that come to your mind.
Poor people, rich people.
Okay.
Happy people. And
Inherent things.
Good and evil.
Inherent tangible things.
Water and fire.
Good, that's perfect. You scintillate today, Shalom. Water and fire. Absolutely correct. They cannot coexist. They are the most extreme because they can't coexist. That's why men and women are considered water and fire. Men are water, women are fire. Somehow they do coexist. Somehow they do coexist, and it ain't easy. Yet you have water and fire. Where does salt come from?
Sea.
Salt comes from the sea in many cases. So that's the water aspect. What would happen if you left salt on something long enough? It would burn through it. Salt has the character of fire, yet it comes from water. Therefore, we put salt on the mizbeach, on the altar, to pay tribute to the fact, yes, God does rule the extremes. Not like the ancient philosophy. We put it on to show, no, we disagree with the heretics. There are extremes in the world, but God rules the extremes. The ultimate example of the extreme is salt. Take the salt, put it on the mizbeach. That way we pay tribute to the fact that God controls everything across the board. That's what the Mepharshim say. Rabbi Gottlieb, I once heard him also discuss this whole philosophy of why bad things happen to good people. So Rabbi Gottlieb, in his inimitable fashion, absolutely dissects the book. I mean, he dices it. He doesn't even dissect it. He dices it. I just remember hearing him talk about, well, and what makes you sure you're a good people? And he said, well, why bad things happen to good people? Well, we have not yet established that you're a good people. Maybe somebody who doesn't put on tefillin is not in the category of a good people. So before you even answer the question, before we even answer your question, first let's get to the question of, and who is a good people, right? And just because something happened to an old woman when she was 75 years old, well, we didn't see what a good people she was when she was 22 years old in college, right? We didn't see what a good people she was, right? And if something happens to an old man who's 75 years old, even if he gives out candy and shul, we didn't see all of his honest business dealings that got him to where he got to. And if something happens to a little old man who seems like the sweetest, as sweet as your Uncle Charlie, right? We don't know about his history of distributing drugs to school children. So exactly who determined that you were a good people? Because you're looking at a very, very limited. Maybe you're a very bad people, right? And we don't know how you treat your wife, which makes you a horrible people. So we don't know exactly what do you know that, Reb Chaim? You want me to scare the kishkas off you now? Reb Chaim Vital says. Good for you to hear alone, right? Be good for you to hear this. Chaim Vital says, if a man is nice to everybody, nice, sweet, kind, chesed, hatzolah, does everything good, but he doesn't treat his wife well, so then when he gets up there after 120 years, they take all of the mitzvahs that he did, they rip him up, and they toss him over the shoulder into the trash pail. Because obviously, if he did them, he wasn't doing them for the right reason. Because why were you doing it? You're doing it because you want to be kind? That's why you're doing it, out of kindness? You want to be kind to your wife. If you're not kind to your wife, so all your other kindness is insignificant. That's what he says.
Scary.
Wasn't that scary? Good. So I'll give you the next one. That'll scare you. Somebody asked Ravolbi, what should you be thinking when you're under the chuppah? What should a man be thinking about when he's under the chuppah? Right? Ravolbi said, well, there's a pasuk that says, Tov legever sheyisa ol minu urav. It is good for a man to carry the yoke from his youth, from when he's young, which is the yoke of a wife. Should be thinking about what a yoke it is to have to deal with a wife. Which means never argue with her, always give in, that sort of thing. Right? Hardest thing in the world. Hardest thing in the world. What's that?
Not where Jack Daniels is.
Hardest thing in the world. That's what he says over here. That a person we don't even know who's a good person. The Torah begins over here on Perek Daled Pasuk Yud Gimel, top of 558. V'im kol adas Yisrael yishgu. If the entire people make a mistake, says Rashi, Elu Sanhedrin. Sanhedrin made a mistake. V'nelam dover meinei hakol. Something is concealed from them. Ve'osu achas mikol mitzvos Hashem asher lo seyasenu ve'hashemu. They make a mistake. Sanhedrin paskins incorrectly. So the Torah discusses what they paskin incorrectly about. It has to be a detail of the mitzvah, not a mitzvah itself. It has to be a detail of a mitzvah. And then it discusses what kind of sacrifice they have to bring. And it could be they paskin incorrectly. It could be there were a lot of Jews that followed their psak, and it turned out it was a mistake. We have an entire, you've heard of Maseches Baba Kama? You've heard of Maseches Brachos, right? Have you ever heard of Maseches Horius? Maseches Horius, a Masechta in Shas. All about what happens if Sanhedrin makes a mistake in their judgment. Now this is extremely important. You know why? Because there is a mistaken perception people have. People think that we think we're perfect. People from the outside who look at from people, they think that we think that we're holy and perfect. That's what people think. They think that they think they know what we're thinking. And it's important for people to know that we never claim that we are perfect. We never claimed our leaders are perfect. And we never claim that there's infallibility. To the contrary, you have a whole Masechta in Shas that talks about what happens if they made a mistake. We can make mistakes. People make mistakes. No one said that we're perfect. The idea that you think that we think we're perfect is because you're making a mistake. Right? You need your own Masechta. because you're making a mistake. We never claim to be perfect. You want me to show you something remarkable? Take a look. There's a medrash that says like this. I'll tell you the medrash. I'll tell you the extension of the medrash. There's a medrash that says that Rabbi, I think it was Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta, met a Roman noblewoman. So this Roman noblewoman comes over to Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. She says, "Hey, you know that tale that you have in the Bible about Joseph? I mean, he's a 17-year-old kid in Egypt being chased around by Mrs. Potiphar. Come on, who are you trying to sell that to? 17-year-old kid in Egypt running away from Mrs. Potiphar. Who are you trying to kid?" Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta said to her, "Well, let's take a look at the Torah. Let's take a look at the Chumash. Here was Ruvain. And the Torah says openly that Ruvain, he rearranged his father's bed, but the Torah turns in time says it in terms of he laid with his father's concubine. Vayishkav pilagesh aviv, says it openly. She says to her, here's Ruvain under his father's jurisdiction. He's a grown adult under his father's jurisdiction, yet he steps out of line and we say it. Then it goes to Yehuda. Yehuda sees a harlot and he summons the harlot. Grown man under his father's jurisdiction stepped out of line, yet we say it openly. She says to her, don't you think Yosef, who's alone on a college campus called Egypt, and he's 17 years old, being chased around by Israel, if he did something wrong, he's less to blame than either Reuven or Yehuda. So if he would have done something wrong, we'd be the first to say it. We got a track record. We don't whitewash anything. So if the Torah says he didn't say it, that means he didn't do it. The Torah says he didn't do it. We don't whitewash. We don't whitewash anything. If he did wrong, he did wrong. We're the first to say it. So we never claim infallibility. And the proof is in the pudding. That's why sometimes when you learn Gemara, guys ask me about, well, come on, how kind of answer is that? I said, well, considering that there are other times where the Gemara says, he's wrong, or we don't know, or this has been lost in the translation. The Gemara itself will say about the Gemara, this was wrong. That's the ultimate proof. The ultimate proof is if you're willing to tell me when you're wrong, then I can trust you when you tell me you're not wrong. Told you I had a doctor who was in the middle of the treatment. Doctor had to pick an antibiotic for me. I had a bad infection. So in the middle of the doctor's checking this, that, the other, he's trying to figure out what to do. He picks up the phone. He calls a specialist right in front of me. Says, what should I do with this guy? What kind of antibiotics should I give him? I'm in the back going, morphine. You know, and he's what he called. He asked it. I was very happy about that. Because he doesn't know, so he asks. Good. Anything he tells me now, I'll trust him more. And I want to see something incredible? Pick any name in the Torah. Pick any name in the Torah that comes to mind. Famous people. Any name. Pick a name, any name.
Moshe.
Any name. Moshe. There you go. Moshe's criticized for getting angry.
Right.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
Sarah Imenu is criticized for laughing when God says she's going to have a child. Anybody else?
Yeshua.
Yoshua in the Torah. Yeshua is in the Torah. Yoshua was criticized in the Gemara and Megillah. Yoshua was criticized because the Jewish people didn't study Torah that night. Lot's criticized for being with his daughters. Eliezer was criticized. The Medrash says Eliezer was criticized. He didn't find the guest. The Torah says Avraham Avinu say he wanted to make a shidduch, and he had a personal bias. It says openly he had a personal bias. But let's start with Adam sinned. Chava caused him to sin. Avraham Avinu said Bameida, his lack of faith. Yitzchak's the only one I don't have openly in Torah, but you can see Yitzchak, if you just read the story, he's being deceived by Esav. Yitzchak is being deceived by Esav. Yaakov Avinu marries two sisters. He gets upset with Rachel. He's, he was away from his parents for too long. All over the place he's criticized. Moshe Rabbeinu gets angry. Aaron is the golden calf. Miriam is Lashon Hara. Everywhere you go, everybody's got criticism. There's a flaw. The answer is yeah. Find me a flaw. Find me a criticism of Mohammed somewhere in the Quran. Mohammed criticizers were few and far between. Right? They had far between means there was a large gap between their shoulders after they said the criticism. That's what's far between. Few and far between. Mohammed criticizers were very, very few and far between if they were smart. Right? Yoshka, what Yoshka doesn't say a word about Yoshka, criticism of Yoshka in the Testament. I mean, a man skating around on ice or whatever, walking on water, whatever he does, he's got, I don't know, New Testament, guys, no criticisms over it. Everything, all is good. All is good. By us, criticism left, right, and center. Right. We never claimed infallibility. That's a big mistake. We're not infallible. We have our flaws. I spoke Lashon Hara about, I think maybe 8 years ago. I spoke Lashon Hara. Now, why would you laugh, Chaim? Right? We have our flaws. We have our flaws. We know we have our flaws. If a person becomes flawless, his job is over. Once you're flawless, you're no longer needed in this world. We're needed in this world to fix our flaws.